Laura Ingraham joins us. She, of course, the editor of Life Set. Oh, Laura, let's start with what Leland was just talking about. It's the cover of the New York Post and Drudge right now. He was gay. Yeah. That, according to Omar Mateen's wife, she said that he confessed he had gay tendencies. Apparently, she was with him and his father once or twice when the dad called him gay. He may have gone to this place, which was a couple hours away from his house on the east coast of Florida, to be anonymous, where nobody knew him. And apparently he used some dating apps, some gay dating apps, a Grindr and Jack. Does this change the story at all?
Well, I mean, there's a psychological profile that will be done, I'm sure, by experts of him. I thought one thing that was interesting that I read in one of the pieces early this morning was the fact that Mateen's wife, ex-wife, said that she was told by the FBI, I believe that's what the report was in the Brazilian media outlet where she gave her interview, not to mention the fact that her husband had gay tendencies. I hope that's not true. I mean, it's an odd thing to say if it weren't true, first of all. So who knows? Remember the rumors that were kind of quickly dispelled that Mohammed Atta, one of the 9/11 hijackers, was gay? I mean, I was going back and reading one of the NBC reports on that this morning as well. Again, never confirmed, but I was watching some of the frequent club goers at Pulse, also on camera, saying they had seen him at Pulse, and that the idea that he was repulsed by you know, two gay men kissing didn't really square with how he was walking by people, you know, in an amorous interactions with each other, didn't really have any reaction at the club. So there's just a lot of information swirling around that seems to change the narrative a little bit here. I mean, I'm not to say he wasn't an ISIS sympathizer. He probably was. But there was also a lot of other turmoil, internal turmoil, it seems, going on with this one individual. And a father who, in some ways, seems to be getting a free pass from the media in his, like, never-ending interviews that he's doing, who himself seemed to have some, you know, radical views when it comes to the Taliban and so forth in previous years. So how this all plays into it, you know, we'll see. But we have to think really long and hard in this country before we start bringing in new people from a very different background, very different culture, who might all be great people. But when we can't keep ahead of the terror curve with native-born Americans, I mean, we can't keep ahead of this, and we're dropping like hundreds of people a week into the United States who probably haven't been vetted in the way that would make most Americans comfortable. It's very tricky.
Laura, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were talking about the terror in general and what happened over the weekend yesterday. Let's take a listen and then get your reaction.
Sure.
She's in total denial, and her continuing reluctance to ever name the enemy broadcasts weakness across the entire world.
I think Trump, as usual, is obsessed with name-calling, and from my perspective, it matters what we do, not what we say.
She supports so much of what is wrong and what is wrong with this country.
All this talk and, you know, demagoguery and, you know, rhetoric is not going to solve the problem.
She has no clue, in my opinion, what radical Islam is, and she won't speak honestly about it if she does, in fact, know.
All right, Laura, what's your reaction to them going after each other?
Well, it's not surprising. I think that as difficult as this moment is for America, I think we're going to see in the coming weeks just how hospitable Americans are or are not to the idea of continuing to bring in people into the country who we can't rely on the vetting of. And I think he's going to the lack of seriousness that he believes the Obama and Clinton administration had toward this issue. And we had the Tsarnaev brothers. We now have this. We had Major Hassan, who, of course, was referred to as someone who perpetrated workplace violence. We have hundreds of ongoing investigations of terror into the United States today. We have great men and women on the ground who are trying to keep ahead of this. But with the Internet and social media, and again, internal psychological trauma that some of these young men and women have probably been, you know, have inside of them.
Right.
It's a lot for our authorities to try to keep ahead of this. So I think Trump is tapping into something that's serious. I think he also has to remember, though, that we have a lot of great Muslim Americans that are working in police and in communities like Minnesota who are trying to do their best to stop the radicalization. So I don't want to alienate all the good folks out there who are trying to really help us in this situation either. So I think he's referenced them before, and I hope he continues to reference them because they're really important in this fight against radical Islam.
And I met quite a few Orlando residents who are Muslim last night, showing up at the vigil to say exactly what you just said, Laura. Meanwhile, if you want to see a separation between the reality on the ground, which is there's terrorists amongst us, and what the reality is in Washington, no better example than the interview I had a chance to do with Governor Rick Scott of Florida a short time ago. There is a huge Gulf of Mexico between Washington and the Republican governor. Listen.
Has the president spoken to you yet?
No, he has not called. A staffer has called, but no, he's not called. After the Paris attacks, I was on the call with the White House, and I said, will you share vetting information from anybody that comes into our state? You're going to send to my state. And they said no.
You're talking about the Syrian refugees that could be coming our direction that have come here.
The White House said they will not share that information with Florida law enforcement. They said, oh, those people have privacy rights. What about our security rights? The security and making sure if you live in my state, you're going to be safe. I'm responsible for the safety of the people in my state. I'm fed up with the fact we're not destroying ISIS. We're not vetting these people. We're not taking care of our own citizens.
Is that unbelievable? Is that unbelievable that the Democratic president won't call a Republican governor and won't even tell them who the refugees they're putting in his state? Can you imagine if President Bush didn't call to New Orleans after Katrina?
Yeah. Well, remember that Chris Christie and New Jersey decided to opt out of this federal refugee program. We've heard countless accounts from individuals in places like Rutland, Vermont, and where we have no town officials other than one mayor who've been alerted to the fact that 100 refugees dropped in a small rural community, by the way, that is struggling in many ways economically. Now this from Governor Scott right after this terror attack. So President Obama wants to tell us all he has such a big heart and he cares so much about people. What about these good people now who are suffering in Florida as a result of a radicalized individual, may or may not have been gay, looks like he was, who was clearly someone who should have been stopped before he got to this point. And he can't even make a phone call. He makes a phone call to Baltimore, Ferguson, and to Trayvon Martin's family, which is fine, but come on. I mean, this is a community hurting, and Governor Scott is no great fan of President Obama's, but this is when he has to put that aside and really work toward healing this and fixing it in a profound way. It's not happening.
Well, you would hope so.
Remember, he's not running for president again. He doesn't have to worry about elections.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is about Hillary now. This is about the bucket list of keeping a Democrat in the White House. I hope people are following this very carefully. We're a nation on a knife's edge right now. And the president oftentimes throws fuel onto the fire.
All right. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Laura.